All right, so this is a video for Calculus with Applications, the Limits Unit Quiz Review. For number 1, if I try to evaluate at 0 and substitute that in, we get 0 divided by 0. That's not going to work, so we have to go to our calculator. So in Y1, I'm going to put the absolute value, and to get that, you have to hit the math button, go over to number, and ABS stands for absolute value, and then divided by X. Make sure your independent in the table is set to ask. Oops. Then we're going to go to second graph, and I have to type in numbers close to 0. So if I set up my table, on the right is 0.001, and on the left is negative 0.001. So at negative 0.001, I'm going to move my cursor over here, and I see at the bottom it's not rounded, it's exactly -1. And at the positive value, it's +1. So approaching 0 from both sides, these are different numbers, so this limit does not exist. I'm sorry the video is so wobbly. I picked a table that is wobbly as I write. For number 2, if I input -2 to the denominator, again, I get an undefined expression. So we're going to type this into Y1. Oops. All right, can you see that? There we go. And this time we want our table really close to 2. So we're going to go 2 on the right. Is it -2? Oops. All right, so on the right of -2 is -0.199. And on the left of 2 is -0.2001. And so if you put your cursor over here on these decimals, you can see out of the glare at the bottom, it's a really long decimal. You don't have to write all that in your table. I'm going to write it as -2.499, and on the right, -0.2501. So from both sides, these numbers are both approaching -0.25, which is the same thing as -1/4. For number 3, if I input -3 to the denominator, I get 9 minus 12 plus 3, which is 0. But because it's quadratic, I'm going to factor and see if any factor eliminates. What multiplies to -12 that adds to -1 is -4 and +3. What multiplies to 3 that adds to 4 is +1, +3. And sure enough, those terms divide to 1. And now I can input -3 without getting undefined. -7 over -2 is +7/2. Number 4, now the limit's to infinity. So with just infinity, I can't really see that color. We're going to look at end behavior. The degree of the numerator, the degree of the denominator, the rest of this term that doesn't matter. 1 is smaller than 2, so the end behavior is 0. Now in number 5, it's another infinity. The highest power, I'm going to ignore the rest of this. When the powers are the same, we divide the leading coefficients. So in front of that, x is a 1, so our limit is 1/3. All right, in 6, if I input 2, I don't get an undefined fraction. I get a value that I can find and I can evaluate. The cube root of -1 is -1. 2 divided by -1 is -2. All right, now graphically, as we approach 3, which is here, from the right, because of that little plus sign, there's no graph to the right, so this limit does not exist. All right, same graph approaching 3. Oops, that's here. But from the left, I'm going to approach the y value of 0. All right, as we approach 5, which is here, from the left, which is this way, the graph goes to -infinity. And on this one, 3, 1, 2, that's here. As I approach 3, negative from the left, this y value is -1. All right, on the back. As we approach 0, which is here, from the right, the y value is going down to -infinity. All right, and then this last one, don't worry about all these pieces. We have a picture. And so we're going to approach -2 from the left, and this y value is 2. Then we're going to approach -2 from the right. That's also 2. From both sides, both y values are 2. They approach the same thing. All right, now let's do 0. Here's 0. As we approach 0 from the left, we're getting really, really close to 0. As I approach 0 from the right, we're getting close to 0. From both sides, no little plus or minus, these values are the same. And I'm going to add a question in here. What if this also asked g of 0? So I look at 0, and the colored in point is at 2. So the limits are what you're approaching. An f of, a g of, this exact value is what does the y equal. Let's do the same thing for this one. All right, so at the end, add in g of 2. All right, last one. As we approach 2, just getting another color. So here's 2. From the left, that's this way. This y value is -2, approaching -2. From the right, this y value is +2. These numbers are not the same, so from both sides, the limit does not exist. And the value at 2, the colored in, the filled in point exists at the y value of 2.